Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining GGNA for this latest webinar, Choose Your Own Adventure, Pivoting from Traditional Gala to a Reimagined Experience. My name is Jeff Neerhoff, and I serve as a Senior Vice President with GGNA. Joining me today is Kate Lader. Kate, we are grateful to have Lyric Opera of Chicago as a client, and I value your partnership today. Welcome.
Thank you.
Kate Lader is Senior Director of Board Management and Special Events at Lyric Opera, managing the company's 6 volunteer boards, fundraising galas, donor travel, and stewardship and cultivation events. Prior to Lyric, Kate worked in similar roles at the Rehabilitation Institute of Chicago, which is now the Shirley Ryan Ability Lab, High Jump, and the Peggy Nodebart Nature Museum. Kate Elizabeth Hurd, Chief Advancement Officer, and is part of a leadership team that also includes Kate Sheehan, Vice President for Principal Gifts, and Patrick Nugent, Vice President for Individual and Organizational Giving. A bit about Lyric. Lyric is redefining what it means to experience great opera today through artistic excellence coupled with innovative, relevant programming, initiatives to connect with and grow new audiences, engagement with communities to ignite creativity across Chicago, and a modernized opera house that is the setting for truly great experiences. Lyric is leading the advancement of opera. This collaborative vision is delivering ever more exciting, thought-provoking, and inclusive audience and community experiences, while increasing the gravitational pull of this art form, its company, and the city of Chicago. Now, before we officially start, I wanted to point out one housekeeping item for audience members. If you have questions, please click on the Q&A button to ask your question. Following this webinar, I will work with Kate to get answers to your questions asked and will follow up with you directly. In the meantime, we have put a link in this chat area so individuals can view the Lyric Opera programming through YouTube. I am positive you will enjoy this concert. So Kate, let's go. Just give us a sense of the history of this annual event, dollars raised, manpower, and expenses.
Wonderful. So here at Lyric Opera of Chicago, we host a very traditional opening night opera ball. It's the start of our opera season, obviously, and it's also really kicks off the fall gala season in Chicago. It's a beloved tradition for us, both at Lyric as staff and donors and board members, but also throughout Chicago. It's hosted by our women's board. They're an esteemed group in the city, and they're one of 6 volunteer boards here at Lyric. And this event has been the exact same for 65 years. And when I say that, I mean really the exact same. It's glamorous, it's formal, it's black tie. Starts with a cocktail hour at the Opera House in our private dining room. You go down into the theater for the opera. You come back for an intermission reception. We bus you over to a historical hotel on Michigan Avenue for another cocktail hour. We do a grand march of the stars with the artists from the evening, and then we move into a 3-course dinner and of course live dancing, or dancing to a live band. And so everything from the herald trumpeters and what balcony they stand on to the women's board receiving line and white gloves is the same, and we haven't changed it. And that's something we really loved and been proud of, to keep that tradition for 65 years. It is about $1 million event for us at Lyric, and it's important to note that we do about 3 galas of that size every year, as well as a multitude of other events at other smaller sizes. Of course, the entire company is involved in something like this, Jeff. It's the start of our opera season, so everyone from artistic, through development is involved. But then on my team, there's about 3 or 4 of us that work on this, mostly full time for the 6 months leading up to that event. A few years ago, though, we realized we needed to start thinking differently about this event. As I mentioned, it's beloved, but it's a long night. It's a big commitment, and it really hasn't changed at all to adapt with the times. So we began those conversations with the women's board and other key constituents a few years ago, and really intentionally and transparently started thinking about that. And so when we had sort of all of that buy-in, we decided that last year, so a year ago this fall, was going to be our final opening night opera ball of that format. We would still do an opening season of something. It would still be formal and black tie and all of the good elements of that event, but we needed to just give it a little bit of a refresh. And so we were really transparent about that. At the opera ball last year, we paid tribute to the history. We had photos from past years, which were a delight to see how similar they were to the party everyone was standing in at that moment. So we really intentionally and positively sunset that. And then we started the process of reimagining what our new season opening could look like and what could go wrong, except then COVID hit in the spring, dun, dun, dun. So that's the history of our event.
Great, thank you. So, you knew the event was coming, but suddenly COVID did hit. So please take us through the process of you and your staff working with the Women's Board leadership to reimagine success in this environment.
Yeah, so I mentioned, right, we'd already sunset the old event. And so I think depending on what lens you're looking through, it was either a stroke of great luck that we already had buy-in to change the event this year, or it was just another hurdle, right? Because then we had to reimagine it a second time and pivot a second time in a very, very short couple-month period. So as soon as COVID hit, essentially, here at Lyric, we made cancellation decisions and went to working from home in mid-March. And we began those conversations right away with Women's Board leadership and staff. And I'm sure, like many of you can probably relate to, it was super unknown, right? And we'd have a conversation and feel really good about where we landed, and a week later we'd meet again, and suddenly none of that made sense. The news cycle had changed. So it was really a moving target, and hindsight is 2020. There was so much we did not know at that time. One example that I think about when we started thinking through options was, if we're not going to do it at the Opera House, if we have people do this at home, maybe we could send caterers into homes and they could serve your group. And we thought, oh, that feels so special, just like the ball. And a week later, we thought no one's going to want staff and 10 people and a kitchen staff in their home. So those were some of the decisions we were really wrestling with. We had great Women's Board leadership on this. We had the chair of our event was our immediate past president, which means she brought a ton of wisdom and firsthand experience and leadership with this group. And then we had an outgoing president who was highly involved and an incoming president. So we really kind of hit the jackpot with our Women's Board leadership on this. And then they, of course, brought in all of our past presidents, our executive committee, et cetera. So let me tell you what we landed on. We decided we were going to go virtual. And I'll also say, at the moment we made that decision in early May, that was a really scary decision for us to make at that moment. None of us knew where we would be in September. I wasn't convinced we would all still be virtual, and it felt like a risk to commit to virtual at that point, thinking, oh, what if we all can gather again by then? We're going to look very silly having a virtual event. Silly me, of course, we couldn't all gather in September. So we did make that decision, fairly far out, but it felt like about the latest we could decide and repivot. So what we decided on was we're going to pre-record a concert. We decided this needed to be high-end, high production value. Some of you may have seen the Met did a concert really, really soon after all the shutdowns happened, and it was so magical with artists around the world sort of filming themselves in their living rooms on their iPhones. And we loved that, but Elizabeth Hurley, our Chief Advancement Officer, had the brilliant insight that was a moment in time, and that was really perfect for where we were whenever that was, 6 months into shutdown. But by September, that was not going to be so cute anymore, and we needed a high production value, well-polished piece that was also worthy of asking for large sums of money, which we were going to need to do. So we knew it had to be a well-polished concert. We kept a lot of the elements that we were going to use for our other version pre-COVID, which was we knew it needed to be shorter than a traditional opera, so we wanted it to be about 60 minutes. We knew we wanted multi-genre, so of course the beautiful aria is the traditional opera, but a little bit of some other genres to see that crossover. And we were very lucky that pre-COVID, Renee Fleming had agreed to sort of headline and help us curate this concert, and so she stayed on and helped with this. So that piece came together fairly easily. On the event side, we decided we would basically try and replicate a gala in your home if that's what you wanted. So you could still host up to 10 people like you had a table of 10 at an in-person gala. You know, obviously we deferred to you if you were going to be comfortable with that or what 10 people you would trust in your home, but we were going to deliver the 3-course meal, appetizers, take-home sweets, wines of all sorts, flowers. You could have a photographer. We were really going to try and replicate that experience. And then we knew we needed something to still make it feel like community, right? Not like you were just alone at home watching something on the internet. So we were going to host a Zoom cocktail party. And to remind us that we are all experiencing this together. Pricing we kept pretty similar to if we were having an in-person gala, which was, you know, certainly a point of conversation and, you know, something we debated, but ultimately we knew the fundraising goals we had to hit. And so we kept it relatively similar. We have 3 wonderful corporate sponsors that annually renew their support at $75,000. So they all, we spoke to them and explained the new format, and they all agreed to keep their support on this event, which we're very grateful for. And then we sold tables at $50,000, $25,000. And we did, at the bottom of this gift chart, we did something a little different. We removed any single tickets, which is obviously different than a regular gala. And so the lowest level you could support and participate in was $5,000. And so for $5,000, you could really just get access to the special concert, and for $10,000, you could get the access and food for 2 people. $25,000 and above is where the sort of party of 10 and the event experience came into play. And we did this, again, a little bit of a risk, but we felt like, you know, a lot of single tickets weren't going to get us to where we needed to be. And this is a really challenging time for Lyric, as it is for all of our organizations. And we chose to think of this a little bit less like a party and a little bit more like a fundraising campaign. And so we were saying, you know, we need a substantial chunk of sponsorship to help us to meet this campaign, to help us produce this concert. And so we kind of put the floor there, which was an experiment, and it turned out relatively well for us. I can talk about that more in a minute. We then had, the Women's Board had the great insight, and I'll talk about this more later because we didn't realize even at the time how smart this was, but they decided that we needed to also make this concert free and available to the public. So that's the link that is in your Q&A chat there. And it's a slightly different version than what the sponsor saw, but only very slightly. And that really helped us in a number of ways, because we were able to say, this isn't only about a party, this is also about helping Lyric develop content and work on access and keeping our brand in front of people and making it accessible at no cost. So that was huge, and I will touch on that again. And then finally, I'll just say, we decided to call it For the Love of Lyric. The Women's Board named it that, which we thought was lovely and really, again, helped us with this messaging that we were all coming together to share our love of Lyric, to spread our love of Lyric, to support this public concert so that others could experience what we do when we talk about our love of Lyric. So I think the title really spoke to the mission of what this event was trying to do, and was really helpful in that way. I want to just touch, Jeff, really quickly on 5 sort of key decisions we made, whether we knew it at the time or not. So first of all, this, and you know, this still is, to this day, is not an official decision or statement, but we all really had the sense that this was going to be probably our only large fundraising event for the year. So that certainly sort of helped as we were explaining this to folks. And that's really different for our organization. Like I said, we normally do about 3 events of this size every year, and then many more smaller ones. So to sort of say, you know, this is our big event ask for you for the next year, I think really helped us. Like I said, the decision to make the concert available to audiences afterwards was really, I think, kind of the key to this entire thing. That was, you know, we're very lucky in that we had content that is shareable afterwards, that we're a performing arts organization in that way. We were able to message it specifically for donors, talk about this is about keeping our brand available, it's about paying artists, it's about producing content, it's about access and not putting a huge pricey opera ticket cost on something. And so that was a key factor for us. And thirdly, you know, that really sort of brings me to the title of this webinar, which is, it was Choose Your Own Adventure. And gift officers, even before we got to the donor certainly could make their own decisions, but gift officers were really able to customize the ask before they even went to the donor, right? So if you're a women's board member and we know you love the glamour of the party and the dance floor and the community of it, we were able to say, we're replicating that, we're bringing it into your home. All those elements are still there. If you're not a party person, if you live in a different state, if you normally just help us fund grand opera on our stage, we were able to not necessarily even mention some of those benefits to you and say, help us be a production sponsor, underwrite the creation of this concert so that we can share it with people. So that was something we talked about in our team internally and with gift officers and in all of our fundraising meetings. And I think it was helpful both for gift officers and then also for donors, right? They were able to really customize their package, and I can touch on that too. But we really almost thought of it more as a fundraising campaign that happened to have some fun benefits along with it and less of a gala. And so that was key for us. And then the last two I'll just touch on are, you know, the Women's Board, I think very wisely decided not to use the word gala. I know I've used it many times already this morning, but they wanted to make sure it was not exclusive, it was inclusive, it was, you know, not tone deaf, it was in step with the times. And typically, you know, our events are very sort of high-end, luxurious, exclusive. So I think this was absolutely the right call in the moment. So we referred to it as just for the love of lyric or for the love of lyric concert. But it was not really technically a gala from our end. And then the last thing we tried to be really careful and mindful of were expenses. This was a bit of a tricky dance, right? Because we needed to both justify asking for a $75,000 or $50,000 table and give people the lyric experience that they know and love. And again, you know, this is a terrible time for so many people, and there are so much pain and suffering right now that we didn't want to be tone deaf on this. So one example of, you know, how we tried to balance that line were the invitations. So typically we do a very, very custom, ornate, highly produced, expensive, heavy invitation, and we mail it to a large swath of people. This year we looked at that mailing list name by name. We trimmed it down to really the people in the lyric family, board members, existing donors, recent past attendees of this event, folks we thought would be really wanting to get this invitation and would want to support this event. Everyone else, of course, still got e-blasts and things, but we didn't feel like we could justify spending that money on those invites. And so we trimmed down that list. And then for that specific list, the day before that invite dropped in their homes, they also got a personal email from the event chair saying, "Dear Jeff, thank you so much for being a member of the Lyric family. We know you love our opening night opera ball. We know you know that it's changed. We know you know there's a pandemic. Here's what we're doing. We hope you'll still support it." So we tried to be just really aware of all of those decisions and balance a beautiful high-end experience with sensitivity and nothing too over the top.
Great. Okay, thank you. That's a great overview. And, you know, again, just want to point out how great I think it is. Certainly your team that you oversee with the Women's Board have been driving this, but the fact that you had a comprehensive approach in bringing the officers, leadership board members together so that this became really a total lyric opera event, not just a special event or an experience. So, you know, that's just terrific to hear. And I think that's something that should resonate with our audience in terms of how you built in actual major gift, you know, cultivation and opportunities to support this experience. You hinted some, but I want to go a little bit deeper into the actual event. You made it clear to me that each person could decide how to make the evening their own experience. You know, tell us how you achieved that.
Yes, so it was definitely a choose your own adventure. And within that, you know, that means people could go from the full range of, yes, I want to host 10 people in my home, send me everything, to, no, I just want to watch the concert, to, here's my money, please leave me alone. And within all of that, it was, again, very, very customized. So, you know, this is something that I'm really proud of. Our events team in general, we do, you know, very close attention to detail on things. So people were able to opt in for all of those elements, but even if they did, they were still making choices along the way. So a couple examples, you know, someone might say, I'm hosting a party of 10. They did get an entree selection for each individual there. And of course, dietary restrictions were accommodated. We were extra strict about trying to get those in advance and notating on the box, you know, dear Jeff, your meal does have no salt, because there wasn't going to be a caterer there to explain to you that your meal had met those dietary restrictions. Folks could, you know, say, please send us the wine, but we're not red wine drinkers, so don't send any red wine. So that would change based on the person. Or people could say, you know, I do want this photographer to come stop by my house, or they could say, you know, we don't want anyone new in our house. So there were really a variety of ways. I would say we had a small handful, but a solid group that wanted that full experience. They got the meals delivered, they got the flowers, wine, photographer, everything. Some people said, you know, I'm not comfortable hosting, so just send dinner for me and my spouse, or me and my spouse and my 2 children. Or, you know, save the money, don't send us flowers, or save the money, we have our own better wine we'd rather drink. Lots of people wanted to just tune into the production. They didn't need anything really delivered to them. And so they just tuned into the production that night and the Zoom perhaps. And then some people, you know, again, really, I think thought of this as a campaign to help Lyric in a difficult time. And it really wasn't about any of those benefits for them, or it was about making this experience accessible to others. And so the nice thing also there is for those folks, right, this was, excuse me, a fully tax deductible gift, right? It really was underwriting a production, and they weren't receiving any benefits. You know, I guess 2 other things I would touch on in this experience and how it was customized. We were very hands-on for anyone who was hosting in any way, shape, or form. So that means we were having personal calls with them the week before, talking about IT, making sure they knew how to stream it. We had a practice video up for them to practice. We were delivering cables up to an hour before the concert if they needed it, right to their home. We were very intentional about how the meal was delivered. So it wasn't, you know, please stay home all day and a bunch of vendors will show up at their will. It was, you know, an hour before the event starts, one vendor is going to show up at your door holding your beautiful bouquet of flowers and say, you know, dear Mrs. Smith, thank you for supporting. I'm going to go get a cooler packaged with everything you need for tonight. And it was all wrapped and ready to serve and presentable. So we really, you know, the Women's Board gets a huge amount of credit in helping us think through those details, but we paid attention to every single detail to make sure it still had that feeling of the love and attention you would have gotten if you were in the ballroom with us. And then, you know, a little bit like you mentioned, Jeff, with our gift officers, this takes a huge team, right? So this wasn't like a traditional gala in that it was the events team putting a lot of this on. The whole company was involved. We had to ask our artistic team to create a concert from scratch for us, and not only curate it, but film it and edit it and produce it and put closed captioning on it. You know, they don't normally do that for our events. Normally it's just the opera they're already doing. Our friends in IT were very, very involved, helping us figure out how to get this streaming on everyone's TVs perfectly at the exact same moment, despite their technical skill levels. Our marketing colleagues wrote a digital program book with artist bios and the run of show, just like you would receive if you were in the theater. Our community engagement and programming team hosted a teen watch party, and they made a family booklet watch guide, so your child can go through this, you know, kind of coloring book, you know, word game puzzle as you were watching. We created an audio commentary explaining the thought process behind curating it. So it was really a full company effort, very intentionally. And we tried to, you know, really just bring everyone into that. And it provided so many more opportunities for engagement, right? Because then also, again, a gift officer could say, I know you're not really a gala person, but have you seen this family guide? I really think your 10-year-old might enjoy watching this type of thing. So it just created a lot of opportunities for us.
Terrific. You know, we touched when we were talking about this webinar about, you know, initial concerns about your pre-concert cocktail party. So, but tell us more how it went.
So the pre-concert cocktail hour, I think as every event planner can probably testify to, this was the part that made me the most nervous because it was the part I had the least control over. So we knew we needed to do something that would bring everyone together that night and make it feel like we were all still together and having that community. And so Zoom was the way we did that. It was a Zoom. It was just like this, you know, a regular Zoom meeting that you'd send out for anything. And we said it was being hosted by our general director, Anthony Freud. If we had been at the Opera House for a normal evening, it would have been in our private dining room. So we gave him that background as a Zoom background, just a little nod to that. He came dressed in his tuxedo with his husband, and they had already poured themselves their 2 favorite signature cocktails. So we really tried to sort of mimic that feeling of being in that room with us at that pre-concert cocktail party, and that sort of energy and buzz that you would have. The women's board really gets credit for this. We sort of tried to think it through with them and say, you know, what exactly does this look like? And they said, you know, it's short and sweet, Kate, right? We're going to come on. Anthony is going to say welcome and thank you. It's going to be a few minutes to see everyone, and then we're going to go straight to the concert. So that started at 7 o'clock, and the concert was at 7:30. Anthony came on, welcomed people, gave very, very brief remarks, you know, 60 seconds, cheers, and then let the women's board leadership say a few things. And then very cleverly, he said, you know, normally in a meeting, I'd ask you to mute yourself. Tonight, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself and turn your camera on. And then he just sort of sat back, and what happened next was complete chaos in the most beautiful, fabulous way that we could have never anticipated. About 100 households turned their cameras on and their microphones on. I was surprised by how many people were truly in black tie, drinking a glass of the Vogue we had delivered. It was very festive, and everyone started talking at once. And in any other scenario, it would have been a nightmare, but for this, it was absolutely perfect. It was that exact sense of community, of seeing your friends, of feeling like you're in that loud cocktail party, rushing to see everyone right before you go down to the opera. And then at 10 minutes before the concert started, we chimed the chimes. We would chime in the Opera House right before a concert, and no one knew that was happening. And the nostalgia that that brought back, you could just see people be like, the chimes. And we rang those at the normal intervals we would, and closed the Zoom, and then the concert began.
Terrific. So success. Why I wanted you to do this webinar for us. So tell us about net expenses, feedback from donors and volunteers, and what the future looked like.
Yeah, so we think it was a success. We're, I think, generally really proud and pleased with how this turned out. You know, the first thing I want to say is this is a team effort if there ever was one, right? First of all, I need to credit the women's board. They were so adaptable, positive, flexible, you know, grace under pressure, taking everything that could have gone wrong at them and just flying with it. And they raised record-breaking sum for us. So huge congratulations to them. Our artistic colleagues, like I mentioned, had to create a concert in 3 months out of the blue. You know, that's something we've never asked them to do before. And then, of course, there's all the unsung heroes of the company, right? The IT team, the marketing team, the community engagement team, the finance team that really had to play roles that they hadn't before. And then, of course, my events team is wonderful and rose to the occasion. So I'm thrilled to be here sort of speaking on behalf of all of those people. But it was a success. So a couple interesting things that we weren't necessarily expecting that we are thrilled about. It was our highest grossing opening night event ever in Lyric history. You know, that's attributed to a couple things. Number one, there were more donors than ever. We had 120 donors. Normally for a gala, we'd have, I don't know, maybe 60 or so, right? Table buyers and single ticket buyers. We had 120 people contribute just to this Saturday night concert. The women's board participated significantly more than usual. Other boards chimed in, and there were lots of new people that gave. In addition to that gross record that we hit, we also netted 2 times more than we've ever net at an opening night event before. And again, that's attributed to more of our family, our board members, our you know, given donors giving, new people who I think came in really because we were able to pitch this as producing a free concert available to the public. And of course, people who are just trying to be charitable at the time they know we are struggling. And then significantly reduced expenses, right? So even though we delivered an incredible, highly produced concert, and even though we delivered very ornate, high-end meals and fabulous wines and flowers and all of that, it was significantly reduced than if we had rented out a ballroom and bussed people across the city and all of those things. So that let us net 2x more. Another sort of surprise win from all of this, as I mentioned, the concert went public the next day, and it's still up, so I hope you'll all watch it. That concert went public on Sunday night, and 15,000 people have already watched it, and most of those people watched it really that night of, actually. And from that, we raised $50,000 just from that night alone. That came from 360 donors. 200 of those 360 people were brand new to Lyric, had never given us a gift before, and the average gift size was $140. We, implemented a giving system that really made it easy, so you could do that $5 or $10 gift without logging in, creating an account, all of that, and I think we really reaped the benefits of that. In addition, my amazing colleague who runs our annual fund really sort of renamed our annual campaign this year to the For the Love of Lyric campaign, or For the Love of Lyric Fund. And he's using all of the gifts and the sponsorship that we raised at the concert as a challenge match for the fund. And so that's helped increase fundraising for the fund and our annual campaign specifically too. And then, sort of those are the hard facts and dollars, but I have 3 quotes I'd just really love to share that I think are particularly meaningful that we received from donors about this event. One came from a longtime board member, and she said, "I don't think I've ever enjoyed an evening more than I enjoyed Saturdays for the Love of Lyric. For me, nothing will ever top my COVID-19 opera ball." That felt like pretty high praise for a virtual event. Someone else said, "This program is getting me to believe in this virtual concert stuff." I think that was something that our marketing team really liked hearing because we're all so virtual right now. And then, of course, for my fundraising colleagues, we got someone that said, "I've done my donating for the year, but I had to give something in addition to recognize this effort." So, we think we touched on a lot of key pieces there, which we're really pleased with.
Great. Well, thank you for all that detail. One last quick question. You usually have other events each year. Will they happen?
Well, Jeff, I wish I had a COVID crystal ball, as I'm sure we all do. I mean, I think the answer is who knows, but probably not. I think, when we thought this would be our only large event of the year, I think that's likely going to be true. We do have another smaller event featuring our young artists that will happen in February or March, and that will be similar format to this one, although on a smaller scale, and again, less about the tangible benefits and a little bit more on supporting the young artists or experiences, private time with them. I don't probably see us doing another gala this fiscal year, but don't quote me on that. And I think one thing we've all agreed on internally, staff and board, is that this was a moment in time, right? We are so grateful for the success we had with this event, but we're not going to try and pull this same rabbit out of the same hat again. It worked for that moment in time. And whenever we do our next gala, whether it's this fall with COVID or without COVID, we're going to try something new. We're not going to try and repeat this formula. I don't think we would have the same success. And so I guess that's a key takeaway for me, at least from this, is that this was perfect for us right then, but we'll need to think of the next new perfect thing. So I guess that brings us full circle back to the beginning, Jeff, which is we will also be going back to the drawing board, despite having a successful event whenever we need to do our next gala.
Right. Well, thank you, Kate. I am grateful for your partnership as a client and for your time in this thoughtful discussion. I'm sure it's been very helpful. We have a number of questions that have been asked, and so again, I'll be reaching out to you to get answers or your thoughts on those questions. And for those who have asked the question, I will get back to you personally. So in the meantime, for everyone, thank you for joining us. I do hope this was helpful. Kate, again, thank you for all your time and congratulations on such a successful event.
Thank you
for joining us. Have a great day, everybody.